Hey, welcome to Hear Us Out. I'm Paul,
And I'm Patrick.
and today we're going to be talking about The Running Man and also a wider kind of look at remakes and at how, like, are they better if they're closer to the source material? So,
Yeah, Paul, you asked me that question. Do you think it makes a difference if a remake is closer to the source material? And I didn't know how to answer because, it's an interesting topic. Is there, is it better? Does it depend on the source material? Should you get more kudos just because you were more faithful? I think it's a really interesting topic.
yeah, it's kind of one of those things of boundaries and freedoms with remakes kind of things,
Mm,
and also the original movie. So to name the 1987 Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger, it has a remake which is the 2025 Glen Powell one, and it is the and Edgar Wright, and the 2025 one is closer to Stephen King's um, original Running Man
massively
story.
so.
Yeah,
Massively so. Yeah.
but does that make it a better movie, or does it just make it more like respectful of the source
Yeah,
material?
or is it just a brownie points thing? And actually, you know what? Before anybody says it in the comments, well, you see, some things are reimaginings or blah blah blah. Well, without getting into all the terminology, because literally you could retroactively say that Arnold Schwarzenegger's Running Man '87 was a reimagining or a reinterpretation or an interpretation of the source material because it went so far from it, and that this is the first real attempt to make Running Man based on the source material. But I think we should stick within what we're talking about. And Paul, I think people do come out of the gate and just give it. There's a certain air of respectability to, oh, this one's closer to the book or the graphic novel or the whatever the property that it might be based on is. And I think that's just pure dinner table epoxiness, to be honest. I think it can be nice if it's what you want. That's great. And I'm not saying there's anything bad about it, but I'm not saying that there is anything inherently good either. I think the best use of going from one medium or media to another is actually to take what you need to then tell the best story. Now, do I think Running Man, using it as the example, the Schwarzenegger one, do I think it squandered a chance to do the original, Stephen King work or Richard Bachman work as it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. So I'm glad somebody did it again. On that level, I am.
Hmm.
But just as that general, the question as you've asked it, I think we do get a little too precious about the idea of, oh, well, it's much better because this time they're closer to the source material. Hmm.
I see. That's the thing is, I would agree. I agree that essentially putting the tagline of "Is it better because it's closer to the source material than like an original the original movie or the first try at the movie's namesake." Like,
Mm,
I agree that if you make a movie, there's stories and themes within the source material that you should take from, but it does make sense that your imagination, your kind of like take on it, you're also just feeling like this could be a better flow for a movie
mm.
than a book is completely valid. I do think that there is an audience group that does automatically will be like it's better because it's closer to the source material, and
Yeah.
it's because they're seeing what they wanted to see, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and fans in particular, people who love the original source material, they're like, oh no, they changed the ending. Which in the case of this year, like look at The Long Walk.
Yeah.
There's a significant change to how it ends versus how the written piece was. And I think it was a good change cinematically and for the movie that they'd made. Now, will a real diehard Stephen
Yeah.
King slash Bachman fan go, no, well, you see, you just don't get it. And I go, yeah, well, maybe I don't. So I would never diminish their ideas, or their feelings. But I certainly don't share the idea that there's just something inherently better because you're closer.
Yeah. Like, I think that the way that you do it is important, because I do
Mm.
think that the 1951's like creature from outer space, I think it's, or from another world kind of thing, like, and John Carpenter's The Thing, um everybody will say that John Carpenter's The Thing is better than the other movie, and like, but and it is also closer to the source material. So it's kind of one of these things that it's just like, is it just happy stance that the movie is considered better than the original take
Yeah.
on the source material, and also it's closer to the source material kind of thing. Because
Mm,
like John Carpenter's The Thing is great. It's suspenseful. It's
brilliant.
one of the best horror movies that that we've said. And also it's closer to the source material. So like it's
Yeah.
just a kind of double whammy thing. But that's not that's more of a happy coincidence rather than the sole kind of thing, because I didn't know for ages that there was an original movie and also there was an original source material that it was taken from for ages.
It's a really good point, actually. Because how are you going to like? Not everybody's going to know that something is based on something. It's and should that matter? And that's this. Look, I'm going to go back to our old little. Nobody give out to me, please. I tend to run back to this little safe high ground box. If it was made with love and the intention of a good output, then that's usually the best thing. Whether somebody moves or changes or gets closer to or further from the source material, or completely just takes one concept from it. Now, actually, that last one, when something takes one concept from something and then uses its name, which is kind of like the original theatrical Running Man. Um, if you only take, and it took enough, but if you only take a very little and then use the name, I always kind of go, oh, could you not have just taken that but used a different name? Because it really is tough on the fans when, of all the themes of this entire property or this entire piece, you kind of you brush along the edge of it, and then you're kind of stealing the, stolen valor, whatever way you want to look at it, you're stealing
I,
the kind of IP inbuilt fan base. So there can be cynical times where I think not enough is done to justify naming something um, after its original source. Let's say.
yeah, I get that because like I will say, yeah, I get that because you can take certain like a tiny piece of some film and just be or some source material and just be like, we're gonna do that, but we're gonna name it the
Yeah,
full thing. You kind of like, well, you're kind of taking away from the actual fans. You could be
yeah,
like, you know, a Running Man story or something, some kind of context that tells you that it's based on something. But
yeah,
just going back onto kind of like the interesting thing about this is the fact is that yeah, we're perceiving right now because the thing is closer to the source material, and it's just an example because Dune
yeah,
also is also closer to the source material, and is also like it would be considered better than the David Lynch one, though I love the David Lynch one is also a fan. But the interesting thing is we have a whole plethora of movies that are specifically based off like of similar source materials, but
mm.
not the source materials themselves, which is the Avengers. The entire Marvel universe is based off,
You got there before me,
yeah,
damn you. Yeah,
which is entirely based off a property that has existed and also a property that has existed in multitudes of different storylines for different characters, and it's just taken those
yeah,
characters and essentially made a movie universe. So
yeah,
they are they are taking elements of the source materials across all of them and then creating their own like cinematic
yeah.
universe, and we're all fine with it. They have sprinkled in pieces of storylines that we wanted to see and stuff, but not fully to the degree in which the original source material goes into those storylines. So it's like it is just I think a small select group of people that,
Yeah.
as you say, around the dinner table, around the like dinner night, kind of evening table thing, yeah, that are like this the snobby cinephiles that are very much just
Yeah.
like because there is an element of that which is when something comes out or is named and which is named and they're just like, well, I've read the source material.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
usually that person, so that's the reason why I can go
Well,
down this route.
quite often you are that person, but not in that way.
Yeah,
Like
I'm
you're
very
the person of that fact, but not of that approach. So
yeah,
don't worry.
and I think that that's like I get to enjoy it in both ways. I get to enjoy going like, oh yeah, I know this storyline, and yeah, I like the
Mm.
changes, kind of thing, rather than
Yeah.
like they didn't do what I wanted, because like it's
Yeah.
just
Well, Paul, we've had, and here's another arena where this it's similar but different. Comics accurate costumes, I think, is the funniest and most pointless argument quite often that people have. And the X-Men, the Bryan Singer X-Men, all the way now to like Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah,
People said way back, "Oh my God, it's terrible. They're not even, they're not actually in comics accurate costume." And then there were some things later on where people wear more comic accurate costumed. Like I'm looking at you, Psylocke, per Olivia Munn.
yeah,
Um, and you have then like the Deadpool and Wolverine moment where it's full Wolverine, and you're like, cool, but you do not want to go back and have launched X-Men without the black leather. Like people go, oh, it's just because like Matrix and everything back then was the black. No, like the joke that they made about it at the time, where he's like, "What do you want me to do? Wear like yellow spandex?" Can you imagine if they had gone comics accurate to try and launch X-Men and still do the movie that they did?
mm,
It would have been jarring in tone beyond belief. It would have required explanation after explanation after explanation, um, and it just wouldn't have worked. Now, did it disrespect anybody's, comic interests? No.
no,
Well, did it disappoint some people? Yes, and understandable. That's fine. But again, stand back and look at the whole work. How you've deviated, did it benefit the whole? Yes. And I think that's the same argument I would always make about how close or far you are from the source material in themes or plot lines or any specificity. Jesus, I'm
I
not saying
get
that
you.
again. Um, so yeah, I think you can almost go from costume back down all the way to the entirety of the theme and the plot. What have you changed and why? More importantly, have you changed it?
Yeah, the focus. Yeah, the focus on
Mm.
what you take and leave is very important. If you can justify essentially, if you could justify the yellow spandex in the first X-Men, then fine. But
Yeah.
they didn't. They were like, we're gonna try and make this a little bit more like we're gonna focus on the characters and the story that we've never brought to life before, and then we may look at other kind of elements later on, which is perfectly fine. So I do agree. I do think that the focus is very important, and I think that for the fans that are very very source material focused kind of thing, or it's their
Yeah.
favorite property or anything like that, I think that they just get to enjoy it a little bit more. Having like they're like they have the in jokes or the in
Yeah.
the inner lane kind of thing of watching the thing. They're just like, oh yeah, that's a really like I really enjoyed that part because it's from the source material. Whereas other general goers like are not going to are not going to get that as much of enjoyment. Though I will say that on the flip side of that, it may cause audience members, the general audience members who may not know the source material, may go back to the source material because
Yeah.
they enjoyed the movie so much. Like, so you get this kind of double whammy of like the Dune books, like Denis Villeneuve's like Dune has like exploded the like the upsale of the Dune like series,
Mm.
and like it's just like that's a happy coincidence once again of
Yeah.
it being good and also close to the source material. Like I do think that the source material is a good blueprint for a lot of things, and
There's a reason that you've gone to this property. It
yeah,
has to be. There's got to be something worthwhile.
and like I think that following that blueprint as far as you want to go, but and then getting the drive and getting the faith and getting the understanding of what was being tried to be done within the source material, and then taking that baton and kind of running with it is perfectly fine. I don't see a problem with it. In
Well,
fact, going back to our original statement, sorry, going back to our original statement of does going closer to the source material make remakes better? I would say no, not because, but because we don't want to see remakes. We want to see new films. So if the closest thing
yeah.
we're going to get in a remake is a full on, like, I'm taking some themes and then some characters and I'm running with it with my own idea, then like
Yeah.
cool. I get something slightly newer. That's perfectly fine. It actually might
Yeah.
soften the blow of having to watch it as a remake.
Let's face it. What is the ideal here? It's Peter Jackson and co. doing Lord of the Rings. is having enough love and care and fascination and attention for the source material, and then the vision to say, this is how we want to make this, and then sticking to their vision. Now, poured out for Tom Bombadil. Everybody got really annoyed back then, Paul. A lot of people got annoyed by changes in the Jackson movies,
Yeah.
or omissions more often than not. Yet everybody loves it. Everybody's like, you know what? Well done. You got from book to screen better than anybody has before. Well, not everybody agrees. Some people enjoy the animation, kind of 15 years prior, but it's pretty much accepted. Good job all round.
Yeah.
Now, could somebody else have another go and have another take at it, and I would be just as happy? Yeah, if they started from the source material. I would hate somebody to try and remake Peter Jackson's
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings. That's where I would start going, no, 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 no.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the source material or bust here, people. Don't be at it. And I guess the corollary also for me, just to throw it in before we run out of time, I, watched the F1 movie this year.
Hmm.
I've watched so many, motorsports and car related things where, for dramatic effect, things are completely unrealistic.
Yeah.
Cinema is about suspension of disbelief. So sometimes, especially if somebody's adapting fiction, you're already in a fictional world. Why does everything have to be directly from the page?
Yeah.
It's a new medium. Let's see how people can build heart and feeling and story and emotion and character, on screen versus on page.
Yeah. No, very much so. I think taking what you focus on and making your own idea is pretty important. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think overall we're kind of a no. Remakes that are closer to the source material than their original than the original try or the original movie. Um,
They're not
I'm
necessarily
not.
better, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a coincidence. Do I think it benefits a certain membership of the audience? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But
It
overall, I think from an audience general point of view, no. I think
yeah.
it may benefit the
It can
original
work,
source.
but it's not the reason that it does work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So let
I
us
love
know
it.
down below what you think. Do you think that closer to the material is better or worse, or are you in the camp where you're just like, no, I don't really mind. Like it's a happy coincidence, but no. Uh, the other question I have is, if you've watched something that is a remake that is closer to the source material, has it made you go back to the original source material,
Hmm.
and read it? Because that would be an interesting one. I can tell you now, The Hunger Games did that for me. I watched the movie
Oh,
and then read the book because I thought it was pretty good.
very good.
Patrick, anything you want to add?
Nope. Just to say this was a great topic. And folks, if you have any other ideas for topics, drop them in down below. We have a whole selection of videos. Please go and check them out. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and share, because that's how YouTube works.
I've been Paul.
I've been Patrick.
We've been here to say, we'll talk to you
See you
later.
next time.